I love the analogy of the Venn diagram.
The problem is you got to remember, what's a Venn diagram?
Yeah, not everybody knows what that is.
I think it's Vin Diesel, right?
Is he the guy in Fast and Furious?
He is, but that's VIN, right? Like the VIN number on a car.
Yeah, VIN.
Okay,
Yeah,
not VIN.
not VENN.
VENN. Okay.
It's probably German, right?
See how we do?
Nerds. This is.
We also have a Venn diagram.
We should.
It's the Ryan side, it's the Mike side, everything that needs to be.
There's lightning bolts in the middle. Right?
All right, welcome back to Building Cyber Safe Communities, a cyber podcast series, the Texas Municipal League Intergovernmental Risk Pool. That is a mouthful.
Episode number 6.
Number 6. So we made it through Cybersecurity Awareness Month unscathed, mostly, for the most part. Hopefully, we had a lot of people join us on the podcast series to hopefully get some good information. Cybersecurity awareness should not and does not really look at a calendar, right? So once the month of October ends, that doesn't mean we can stop focusing on cybersecurity and best practices, correct?
Oh, that's right. We're already into November, and we've seen that the threat actors didn't take a break during the month of October, and they've been very active since then.
Yeah, so they're not looking at the calendar either. No. So with that said, we're going to continue this series throughout the year. Hopefully we provide some good insight and some good topics that you folks are finding valuable. I would like to say, if we want this to continue, we need folks to subscribe, turn on your notifications. We want to make sure that we're providing something of value. Send us feedback if you have potential topics that you want us to cover. Let us know. We'd be happy to go over those. But I think today, since we're kind of starting anew, Cybersecurity Awareness Month is over, I'd really like to start talking about some of the services that we offer our members here at the Risk Pool. For those that don't know, prior to June of this year, our cyber team was a team of 1, and that was me, right? Yeah. So we hired Mike, brought him on board. We doubled our staff, but we quadrupled our expertise.
I don't know about that, but thanks for saying it.
I'm just telling you, we brought in a wealth of knowledge when we brought in Mike, and we're super glad to have him. So in doing that, we've started a lot of new services that we're going to offer our members, and I think they're going to be beneficial. A lot of folks don't know about these things, so let's talk about those today. I'm going to get us started with talking about just general overall cybersecurity best practices. So we have members reach out to us and just kind of don't know what to do. And I think you in a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, you made an analogy that really struck home with me, and that was just the everyday blocking and tackling, right? The basics of cybersecurity is akin to the blocking and tackling that you do in football. We can help people with those best practices that really, when they're consistently applied across an organization, can really help prevent a cyber incident from happening. We're talking about data backups, multi-factor authentication, principle of least privilege, encrypting your data, all the things that we kind of talked about during the month of September or October during Cybersecurity Awareness Month. That's what we're talking about. And you'd be surprised how many people aren't doing just the basics, right? That we take for granted. So it's good for us to be able to engage with members and help them understand why it's important to do those things.
Oh, I think that's exactly why we have the Cyber Squad. Hopefully you and I will be able to help our members with that. Let's just have a conversation. If they want to pick up the phone and call us one day or send us an email, cybersquad@tmlirp.org, with anything they may wonder about. That's the worst part, is you put something in place, years go by, and you wonder, has this evolved enough to keep us safe from the threat as it was several years ago? And, as you have seen many times, it's not.
Right.
And we'd like to have those conversations with our members if they have questions about their best practices.
Yeah. And it's not a one-time conversation because, like you just said, the threats evolve.
Yep.
They change. We have to change and adapt with them to make sure that we're on that cutting edge.
Yeah.
Right. And being proactive about those things. And I think one of those things is internal policies, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so that's one of the other services we offer. And I do want to mention, thanks for doing the intro. These are at no cost. The Risk Pool has put Ryan and I in place so that we can help our members with these challenges. And so we're offering these 8 services, I think, and more if needed, at no cost to the members. And one of them is that we'll take a look at your information security policies and do a review on them. A lot of policies kind of grow organically in organizations. They come up usually when somebody's had an incident. You're laughing because we all know the story. You don't want to be that guy that's the reason for the new policy. But sometimes that's the way life evolves, right? And those policies may not have been as complete as they need to be. They may not have evolved as the threats have evolved.
Right.
And they may not be addressing all of the areas that you need to make sure your employees are covered under, so that you can avoid some of these actions that may result in a bad outcome. So we're more than willing to sit down and do an information security policy review. And we put together a kit for those members who may not have a good start. We put together a foundational starter kit, templates that you can use. I think it's a basic 13 policies that we recommend you start with. It's not the end of your policy program, but it's a great start. And these templates will allow you just to put your entity name in a space and have a good foundational set of policies to begin your program with.
Yeah, good starting point, something you can jump off from without having to create something from scratch.
Right.
And we're talking about like bring your own device policies.
Acceptable
multi-factor
use.
authentication, acceptable use,
Right.
just kind of as some examples in case people don't quite understand what we're talking about.
No, that's good. And one of those things that comes from your policy is that you will now begin to be able to move into what you're going to talk about, and that is incident response.
Yeah, so incident response, it's, the fire drill, right? I mean, we equate it to making sure you have a plan in place when something does go wrong to be able to respond, because the worst time to practice a response is in the middle of a real world event, right? So we can help you with an incident response plan, right? That's kind of tailored towards your organization. If you have one in place, we can help review that to make sure that you're not missing any gaps, validating that it could adequately respond to an incident and how it would respond with cyber insurance, because the insurance that you have through the risk pool or another source does provide services that assist you in an incident response. So you want to make sure that you're doing that in an appropriate manner, and taking advantage of those resources can help clarify the roles and responsibilities in your organization, because everybody seems to think that when something goes wrong from a cyber perspective, that it's IT's responsibility. It's only IT's responsibility.
Right.
And we have found that when that happens, that's a very difficult cyber incident response. Right?
Well, it's a small segment, right?
Yeah, very.
You're going to have your public information folks involved. You're going to have legal teams involved. You're going to have your panel provider from your cyber insurance involved. And you will have IT involved, usually because it is an IT function, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. I think you used a good word in there earlier, and that is identifying people who play the different roles that are involved in an incident response policy. And you need to make sure that you've not only named those people, but the people that you've named are aware that they're going to serve in that role. And then I guess the last thing I would always advise people to do is, once you have a good incident response policy, make sure you print it out. There should be copies of the incident response plan in every one of the named roles, vehicles, or at least in their office somewhere. Right. Because it may be a ransomware event and you can't get to your electronic resources, and we've had members that have suffered that incident.
Yeah, and list of contacts and ulterior contact numbers, right? Not their office number, because their voice over IP phone system may be impacted.
That's right.
Cell phone, work emails, you may not have access to some of those things. You need to make sure you have an understanding of how to get in touch with those people to adequately respond.
One thing I would add is I recommend that plan be reviewed annually. So if you even have one now, have you looked at it in the last year? A lot of times, especially in government, people move on to different roles in their formal day job, and they may no longer be available to fill that role that's detailed in the incident response plan, or they may no longer be with the organization.
Absolutely.
So you have to review those at least annually to make sure that the people and the contact numbers are still good in your incident response plan.
Right. So we have kind of a list here that we're going to go over. I'm going to skip yours because we're talking about incident response. It leads into tabletop exercises, right?
Yep.
So your response plan is only as good as the paper that is printed on, right? It really gets proven its value when you implement it and practice it. Back to the fire drill, right? practicing the plan to make sure that everybody does know their role and responsibility, how you're going to respond to an event, dictates your success in recovery. The quicker you can identify and respond, the more successful you're going to be in recovery, which of course helps you provide services, but it also drives the cost, because we're talking about financial impact when we have these types of situations. So tabletop exercises, we're working or partnering with CISA, right? Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, Department of Homeland Security, where we're going to start hosting regional tabletop cybersecurity exercises.
Yes,
so we'll
that's
come
exciting.
out and help you go through a mock scenario in a safe, controlled environment to help you understand how this process actually plays out in the real world.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be coming to the regions near our members.
Yeah.
We'll be going through Texas with CISA in tow.
Roadshow.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. But you make another great point, and that is that you can't just put this incident response plan on a paper and not actually have kind of done a walkthrough of it at a minimum, because these muscles don't get exercised very often.
Yeah.
It's very difficult during an event, and we've heard some members speak to that challenge, to then all of a sudden decide, oh, wait a minute, how does this actually play out in real life? How do I do this? And a tabletop exercise is a phenomenal way to get those people, those various parts and pieces, kind of familiar with their role and how the plan needs to be enacted.
Yeah. You mentioned something the other day that struck home with me too, was the worst time to check your fire extinguisher to make sure it's working or know where it's at is when your kitchen's on fire.
Yeah, I know I stole that line from somebody, so don't give me credit for that one. But yeah, that's exactly right. And this is all that, everybody's got a day job. Some people have multiple day jobs, but these are important pieces of your cyber defense to have in place. And if you don't have it, you really are at risk of making some initial decisions that you may regret later.
Yeah. So we kind of skipped over, like I said, we had kind of a list here. We want to make sure we hit all of them. I kind of skipped over risk assessment.
Yeah.
I think it's important. Let's talk about that.
It is. All of these things are interrelated,
Right.
But kind of going back to our information security policy review, we can come in and do a risk assessment to give you some sense of where your organization sits on the risk scale. Are we missing things? Are we doing things that we really haven't got the protection for that we believe we need? And we've settled on a format that's put out by the Center for Internet Security. They have 174 controls they recommend organizations implement. These are controls that are meant to help you protect you from risk. But 174 is a lot, right?
It is.
So they have broken these controls into 3 implementation groups. And you and I have a tool that will allow us to sit down with a member and within an hour or two, do a quick risk assessment on either implementation group 1, or if they're further along, we can do it on implementation group 2 to give them a sense of where they may have gaps in their information security posture.
Yeah.
These risk assessments are free. The tool we use is from the Center for Internet Security, and they are a nonprofit that is focused on state, local, tribal, and territorial. And the reason I really love this tool is it's in English, right? So we're not sitting down
Plain
asking you
English,
very
right.
technical
Yeah.
things. But it also, if you have the 54 controls out of the 174 that you need in implementation group 1, if you have those in place, the Center for Internet Security says you are protected from most threats on the internet today. And I think that's a very bold statement by them.
It is.
But it's reassuring for our members who know, hey, at least I've got these first 50 some odd controls in place.
Yeah. You don't know what to focus on until you can identify those potential gaps.
That's right.
And that's what this does. And what I like about it is it stair steps it, right? It makes it the base level, those 54, implementation group 1. And then once those are handled, then you can start getting a little bit more advanced control. And that's where we see some of our more sophisticated members focusing on, because they've got the base level, but you don't know what you don't know, right?
And it also helps prioritize your limited resources. If you're looking at the next budget year and it looks lean, as most organizations are, this is an area where we have more risk. We want to focus some of the funds we have on this for this year, and then improve our posture next year and continue down that path. And this assessment will give you that prioritization to help guide those decisions.
Great roadmap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Training. So podcast is one thing, right? We're trying to gather or create content that's beneficial to our members. helps them focus on the things that they need to be doing to improve their cybersecurity posture. Of course, we do offer the state mandated cybersecurity awareness training, which is required every year. That'll be updated.
That's the annual one, right?
It's the annual one, yes, sir. I mean, no offense, the bar is set pretty low, but it's at least a baseline. And we're going to continue to build out our portfolio of training that addresses specific needs, right? We have a video series. Some of you may have seen the Hacker Hank series that address some very specific things like fraudulent instruction. We still see the fake wiring instruction emails coming from, looks like a vendor sending the money. So we have some training related to that, and we'll continue to build out that training portfolio to address specific cyber threats as we see them arise, right?
Yeah, and those threats are continuing to come at our members 24/7, right? I mean, these bad guys aren't sleeping, and so we need to make sure that our user awareness training is evolving and getting better. You mentioned the state annual one, which is the minimum required, and I think it's a great foundational piece. But as you also know, there are many other things that, depending on your role in an organization, that you do that may have other risks that you need to be made aware of.
Right.
And by the way, I love that Hacker Hank guy. He's a great spokesman.
He steals the thunder when he's in the video, so that's okay. I'm perfectly okay with that.
And that, talking about the roles in organizations, a lot of our members are smaller organizations, and they may not have a named information security officer or a lot of resources to help them with that. Some members we've spoken with are looking to fund a position or maybe make that a part-time part of somebody's job description, and I think all of those are wise decisions, because you really need someone in the office who can help understand some of the complexities of these controls and how to implement them. Whether you outsource it or not, you want to make sure that if you do pay to have a person do it, that you're getting the skills you need. And so that's one of the services we're offering, is we will review your job descriptions for information security positions to help you make sure you're asking for the skills and experience that are appropriate for the risks that you're wanting to mitigate.
Yeah. Kudos to members that are being proactive in hiring folks that are dedicated to cybersecurity, right?
Yeah.
Because IT and cybersecurity really are kind of different skill sets. So an information security officer is important to have in an organization. So if they're focusing on that, we want to make sure they're getting the right credentials, the right type of work experience to be able to adequately fill that role. So I think that's a valuable tool.
Yeah, and some of the job descriptions that we use, especially in public sector, are a little older, and some of the ways that they word the job functions are maybe not as up to date as they need to be, especially in the area of cybersecurity, where there are some very specialized skills that you may want your new member of your team to have, or there may be some areas that you want to accentuate because of some risks that you've identified through one of these risk assessments.
Right. So a list of services, right, that we are starting to offer our members, and I didn't mention it, but you mentioned it, but I think it's worth mentioning a second time or a third time, that these are at no cost. One of the benefits of being part of the risk pool is we're able to provide these to our members on site, remotely, different mechanisms, but at no cost to the member. And I think that's a valuable tool. So we're hoping that people will take advantage of that. We hope that they take advantage of it so much that we have to bring in a third person, hire another person on our team to take some of the load off. I think that would be very beneficial to our members. So just let's recap them real quick, kind of go down the list. Cybersecurity best practices, information security policy review. You have a starter kit. I think that's awesome. Mike has done a great job of working on that. Incident response plan review. What else?
Risk assessment assistance, disaster recovery planning. We'll also come in and do tabletop cybersecurity exercises. We'll try to do those regionally so we can get as many members as possible.
Yeah, be on the lookout for that. We'll be posting some information very soon about the first one that we'll be hosting, probably somewhere in the February timeframe.
Yeah, it's going to be a good start to 2025.
Absolutely.
The user awareness training that we continue to improve on, and Hacker Hank is available as needed. And then lastly, as we just mentioned, the information security job positions. Some of these areas are very specialized, as you know, and some of these things happen suddenly. And one good example that's happened recently to us is this cyber squatting topic. I want to just take a time to mention this. We've seen this happen to several of
Yeah.
our members, and then it happened to us last week.
Cyber squatting, not
Cyber-
cyber squad, right? Okay. Just want to make sure we.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So cyber squatting is when someone registers a domain that is very similar to your domain name. So in our case, our domain is tmlirp.org. You see it in our emails. You see it in our website. Somebody registered tmllrp.org. It looked very similar at the header of an email. And one of our risk management advisors caught that in an email that went to one of our members. And we quickly identified that this was an attempt to get the member involved in a fraudulent transaction.
Yeah. Redirect funds.
Yes.
That's what they were trying to do
Yeah, and
by impersonating us.
yes. And so one of the very important steps to go forward with that is the federal government has made available to government entities the .gov domain. And if you're not on a .gov domain, we recommend you get there as fast as you can. We're making the same recommendation for our organization.
Yeah.
.org, we all thought it was kind of a protected safe space for nonprofits and things like that, but it is not regulated. The .gov domain is regulated by the Department of Homeland Security. Only official government entities are allowed to be a member of .gov. If you're not familiar with this or you want to learn more, go to get.gov, and there's a whole set of instructions there, and there are even grant funds available to help you pay for any migration costs you may incur. Or you can always email Ryan and I, Cyber Squad, or you can give us a call if you want to know more about it. But we recommend that everyone start looking at their domain, because we have some members that are actually, unfortunately, using a .com domain.
Right. Yeah.
And that really does not differentiate you very well as a government entity. And if you have a .gov domain, that cyber squatting is not readily available to the threat actors.
Yeah, very difficult. The .org, we could go to GoDaddy.com or any other domain hosting registration site and purchase a .org website right now.
Yeah.
And shield our identity, so you wouldn't even know who's purchasing that.
Yeah. In fact, in the incident we experienced last week,
Yeah.
the domains had been registered 4 days previous.
4 days
Yeah.
and in a foreign country.
Yes.
Right.
That's
So
right.
we tracked that down, so we were able to see
Yeah.
that. So let's talk one last thing on the topic, because we brought this up in a conversation internally last week, and we've had a couple of members ask questions over the last few months about the TikTok ban on government devices.
Yeah, so Senate Bill or House Bill 1893, I can't remember which one they settled on, was signed by Governor Abbott last year, and it put in place a ban on TikTok and other applications, but TikTok was the one that it was named for, being run on any government-owned or issued device. The ban went into place 60 days after DIR and DPS issued a sample policy. Well, that sample policy was issued in September, I believe September 14th or 15th of this year. And so effective on November 20th of this year, TikTok is banned from any government issued or owned devices in the state of Texas.
Yeah.
And we don't want our members to get caught short on that.
Yeah. So reach out to us with more questions about that. We can point you in the right direction. I believe DIR will post that sample policy on their website, I believe.
They already have.
They
yes.
already have. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that'll be helpful there. So any other last minute topics?
No, just like and subscribe, and we'll put the link to the DIR policy for the TikTok software application issue in the comments on the website.
We'll also put the link to get.gov too as
Yeah.
well. So,
Good stuff.
but as always, reach out to us. And he just said it, like and subscribe. We want to try to keep this thing going as long as possible. We want to make sure we're building value in what we're providing. But in order to do that, we need content. So if you have ideas about what you'd like us to discuss, let us know so we can keep this going. So last minute, anything else?
Good stuff.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
All right.